Millionaire falls in love at first sight with the bridesmaid who was late to his friend's wedding. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses floated through the air of the Willow Creek Country Club. Golden light spilled across tables draped in ivory linen. The place smelled faintly of roses and champagne. It was the kind of wedding that looked like it had been lifted straight out of a magazine, perfectly timed, perfectly planned. Everyone was already seated when Ella Monroe rushed through the carved wooden doors, breathless, clutching the soft pink bridesmaid dress she had been steaming only minutes earlier. Her curls were half-pinned, her lipstick smudged from running. The ceremony had already begun. She froze at the back, cheeks flushed, trying to find where she was supposed to sit. Row by row, guests turned to glance at her, their expressions polite but curious. In the soft music and vows echoing from the altar, she whispered to herself, "Oh no, table 7, table 7." Her heart hammered. She spotted an empty chair beside a tall man in a charcoal suit. His posture relaxed, his eyes fixed on the bride and groom. Without thinking twice, she tiptoed down the aisle and slipped into the seat beside him, whispering, "Sorry, I am late." The traffic was unbelievable. The man turned his head slightly. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his gray eyes flickered with quiet amusement. He leaned closer and murmured, "Late, but worth the wait." Ella blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. She smiled awkwardly, then focused back on the ceremony. As the couple exchanged vows, she tried to steady her breathing. Her heels pinched, her palms were clammy. The scent of his cologne, something sharp yet warm, made her heart race faster. When the crowd clapped, she joined in, relieved that no one seemed to notice her mistake. The man extended his hand politely. "I am Ethan," he said. "Ella," she replied, shaking his hand, still embarrassed. "You are with the bride or the groom?" he asked. "The bride," she said quickly. Her hair almost fell apart before the ceremony. "I had to fix it. I do bridal styling. You know, hair, makeup, sometimes flowers when the florist forgets." He smiled. "So you save weddings?" "Oh, only the ones that try to fall apart," she said with a small laugh. She did not notice that the guests at the next table were all wearing the same silver boutonnieres, the symbol of the groom's family. She had sat in the wrong section entirely. During the reception, waiters poured champagne into crystal flutes, and Ella's nerves began to settle. Ethan stayed beside her, quiet but attentive. He asked about her work, and she admitted that she rented a tiny booth in a shared salon downtown. "Not glamorous," she said, "but it pays most of the bills. I dream of having my own studio one day, a place for real women, not just models." He listened, smiling faintly. That sounds like something that would matter. Something about the sincerity in his tone made her chest tighten. The music swelled, and guests began to dance. When Ella stood to leave for the restroom, she dropped her small notebook, the one she always carried to sketch hairstyle ideas. Ethan bent down and picked it up. The first page read, in neat handwriting, "Because every girl deserves to feel beautiful once." He looked at the words for a long second, then handed it back. "You already make people feel that way, do not you?" he said softly. Ella blushed. "Maybe one day," she said, tucking the notebook into her clutch. As the night went on, she felt strangely at ease with him, as if they had met before. When the lights dimmed and the newlyweds began their first dance, Ella turned to say something, but Ethan was already watching her, his gaze steady, curious. She smiled shyly, unaware that she had just sat next to the man who would change her life forever. The night after the wedding, the sky over Willow Creek shimmered with soft city light. Ella sat on the edge of her small bed, still wearing the faded t-shirt she used for work. The smell of hairspray clung to her hands. Around her, the apartment was quiet except for the hum of an old refrigerator and the drip of a leaky faucet. The walls were thin, covered with taped-up photos of bridal hairstyles she had created over the years. Her roommate, Lila, peeked out from the kitchen. "You looked amazing in that dress tonight," she said, grinning. Ella groaned. "I was late," sweaty, and sat in the wrong seat. Lila laughed softly. Then you must have been memorable. Ella smiled, but her thoughts wandered. The man at the wedding, Ethan, his quiet humor, his calm eyes, the way he listened like her words actually mattered. She shook her head. He probably thought I was ridiculous, she murmured. She opened her notebook, the one with the line he had read. Because every girl deserves to feel beautiful once. Between the pages were sketches of braided crowns, veils, and faces she had drawn while waiting for clients. In the corner of the latest page she had written, "Someday, my own bridal studio." Her fingers brushed the worn edge of the page. Rent was due in 5 days. Her last client had canceled, and the salon owner had warned her that her booth fee would increase next month. The envelope on her nightstand contained just enough for groceries, not enough for both rent and supplies. She reached into her drawer, pulling out her toolkit, a collection of brushes and curling irons wrapped in a towel. They were old but still worked, her livelihood packed in metal and wire. She sighed. "Maybe I should sell them," she whispered, though even saying it made her chest tighten. The next morning, she woke before sunrise, walked to the corner diner, and started her side job serving coffee. The smell of bacon and pancakes filled the air, and her shoes squeaked against the tile floor. She greeted each customer with a tired smile. The regulars called her Sunshine because she never complained, even when tips were small. Between tables, she checked her phone. No new messages. She tried not to think about Ethan. It was silly. He was a guest at a fancy wedding, clearly someone from another world. She, on the other hand, was scraping together rent money and praying for a miracle. When the breakfast rush ended, she leaned against the counter, sipping cold coffee. "You okay?" asked Sam, the cook. "Just thinking," she said. "About your dream salon?" She looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" He shrugged. "You doodled chairs and mirrors on your order pad." "Oh," she smiled faintly. "One day, maybe when life stops being so expensive." Sam handed her a paper bag with leftover muffins. "Here, for lunch. And keep believing in that dream, kid. The world needs people who do not give up." Walking home, she passed the shop window of a bridal boutique. A mannequin in a white lace gown stood behind the glass, haloed by morning light. She paused, her reflection blending with the dress. For a moment she saw not a tired waitress, but a woman capable of creating beauty for others and maybe, someday, for herself. When she reached her apartment building, the landlord was standing by the door. "Miss Monroe," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "The payment is still short." "I know," she said, clutching the paper bag. "I just need a few more days." He nodded once. "Friday. After that I will have to find another tenant." She thanked him quietly and climbed the narrow stairs, each step heavier than the last. That evening, she sat by her window, watching the neon sign from the diner blink on and off. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lila. "Want to talk about the wedding guy?" Ella smiled, typing back. "Nothing to talk about. He belongs to champagne nights. I belong to coffee mornings." Then she turned the phone face down. The city outside murmured with traffic and distant laughter. She drew her knees up, hugging her notebook close. "I will not give up," she whispered. "Not yet." In another part of the city, far above the streets, Ethan Parker sat in a glass-walled office overlooking the skyline. The same sketchbook page echoed in his mind. Because every girl deserves to feel beautiful once. He closed his laptop, his thoughts lingering on the girl who had sat beside him by mistake, the girl who smiled like she had built her hope from nothing. For the first time in months, he found himself wondering what it would feel like to see her again. 2 days later, the morning sun poured through the diner's front window, turning the stainless steel counter into a strip of light. Ella stood by the register, tying her apron a little tighter. The breakfast crowd was loud that day. Construction workers, delivery drivers, mothers with toddlers, and she kept her smile steady even when her feet ached. When her shift ended, she pulled the small notebook from her bag and set it on the counter. Between refilling coffee pots, she had sketched a new design, a soft updo framed by silk petals. Underneath she had written, "For the everyday bride." She traced the line with her finger, imagining her own name on a storefront window. Ella Monroe Bridal Studio. It felt impossible, yet the thought warmed her chest like sunlight. That afternoon, she visited a thrift shop on Maple Avenue, looking for cheaper supplies. The aisles smelled of dust and lavender detergent. She picked up a set of used hairbrushes, a cracked mirror, and a second-hand mannequin head. When she placed everything on the counter, the elderly cashier said kindly, "Looks like you are building something." "Trying to," Ella answered, smiling. "One small piece at a time." "No?" As she walked home with the bag clutched against her chest, she passed a small park. A mother was helping her daughter feed pigeons by the fountain. The child laughed, scattering crumbs. And the sound reminded Ella why she loved what she did, the way beauty could bring joy, even for a moment. She stopped, opened her notebook, and added a quick sketch of the little girl's hair tied with a ribbon. Another dream stored between fragile pages. That evening, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Miss Monroe? This is Grace from Everlight Events. We are expanding our wedding team and received your name from a stylist friend. Would you be available for a consultation tomorrow morning?" Ella blinked at the screen, hardly daring to believe it. "Yes," she typed quickly. "Yes, I am available." The next morning, she arrived at the downtown address, a tall glass building that looked too elegant for her worn shoes. She double-checked the text, then took a deep breath and stepped inside. The lobby smelled of jasmine and polished wood. A receptionist guided her to a waiting area filled with floral displays and framed photographs of grand events, ballrooms, vineyards, beach weddings. She stared at the images, her heart pounding. A woman in a sleek gray suit approached, smiling. "You must be Ella Monroe." "Yes," Ella said softly, standing. "I am Grace. Thank you for coming on such short notice." They walked into a bright conference room. "We are looking for stylists with creativity and empathy," Grace explained. "Our clients appreciate authenticity." She opened a folder filled with profiles. "Would you mind showing us some of your work?" Ella hesitated, then opened her notebook. Page after page of sketches, pinned photos, and hand-drawn hairstyles. Grace studied them carefully, her brow lifting in quiet approval. "These are lovely," she said. "You have a real eye for softness and detail." Before Ella could respond, the glass door opened. Footsteps echoed on the marble floor. A man entered, his tone calm, his presence commanding. Grace smiled. "Ah, Mr. Parker, perfect timing. This is the stylist I mentioned." Ella turned, her breath catching. Ethan stood in the doorway. The same gray eyes, the same quiet expression. He wore a crisp navy suit instead of the tuxedo from the wedding, but there was no mistaking him. For a second, neither spoke. The world seemed to narrow to the faint hum of the air conditioner and the pounding of her heartbeat. "Mr. Parker," Grace continued, oblivious to the tension, "this is Ella Monroe. She might be perfect for the upcoming charity gala styling." Ethan's gaze softened, and a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "We have met before," he said. "At a wedding, if I remember correctly." Ella's cheeks flushed. "Yes, by accident." Some accidents are worth repeating," he replied. Grace looked between them, curious but smiling. "Then it seems fate agrees." After the meeting, Grace handed Ella a business card. "We will contact you soon. Thank you for coming, Miss Monroe." Ella nodded, murmured her thanks, and stepped out into the bright daylight, her mind spinning. She leaned against the building, clutching the card, her heart fluttering. A gentle breeze lifted her hair. The name Ethan Parker echoed in her thoughts. She still did not know who he really was, but for the first time in weeks, her life felt like it was shifting, small, fragile, but full of possibility. That night, she placed the card beside her sketchbook and whispered to herself, "Maybe this is my chance." Outside her window, the city glowed, restless and alive. In another corner of that city, Ethan Parker stared out of his office window, the reflection of the skyline mirrored in his glass. His assistant spoke quietly behind him, listing details of the charity gala. He nodded absently, his mind far away, thinking not of contracts or clients, but of a girl who believed every woman deserved to feel beautiful once. The following week passed in a blur of nervous energy. Ella could barely focus at the diner. Her mind kept replaying the moment she saw Ethan again. When Grace from Everlight Events called to confirm her trial assignment for the charity gala, Ella almost dropped her phone in disbelief. On the morning of the trial, She arrived early at the Everlight headquarters. The building gleamed under the summer sun, glass panels reflecting the skyline. Inside, she was shown to a preparation suite filled with flowers and soft lighting. She set down her worn toolkit on the marble counter, the same brushes and combs she had once thought about selling. Now, they looked like instruments of hope. The first model arrived, a young bride-to-be who would appear in the gala's promotional shoot. Ella tied her apron and began to work, her movements careful and fluid. The air smelled of jasmine hairspray and fresh roses. She listened to the model's nervous chatter and smiled, guiding her breathing. "Do not worry," she said softly. "Every woman shines brighter when she feels seen." When she finished, Grace and a few staff members gathered around. "Beautiful," Grace whispered. "It feels real, not forced." The photographer nodded in agreement. Ella exhaled a long, shaky breath, relief washing over her. Later that afternoon, Ethan appeared at the door. He stood quietly, watching her clean her tools. "You are good at this," he said finally. She looked up, startled. "You are early." "I wanted to see the results myself." She smiled faintly. "So, was it acceptable, Mr. Parker?" "It was more than acceptable," he said. "It was honest." "That is rare." They walked together through the glass corridor toward the elevator. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city stretched below them, bathed in golden light. "You never told me what you really do," Ella said, her tone light but curious. "I manage events," he replied, his eyes holding hers for a second longer than necessary. "Big ones, I assume." "Sometimes," he said simply. She laughed softly. "Well, whoever you really are, thank you. I needed this opportunity." You earned it," he said. "You should never thank anyone for recognizing what you already are." That evening, when Ella returned home, she felt lighter than she had in months. Lila noticed immediately. "You are glowing," her roommate teased. "It was a good day," Ella admitted. "They liked my work. I might be invited to help at the gala itself." "That is huge, Ella." She smiled. "Maybe it is the start of something new." Across town, Ethan sat in his office, reviewing gala plans. The event was a cornerstone of his company's philanthropic branch, a fundraiser for women-owned businesses. As he looked over the list of participants, he paused at one line, "Styling Consultant, Ella Monroe." A faint smile crossed his face. The next morning, Grace called Ella again. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "Mr. Parker was impressed. You are officially on the gala team." Ella pressed a hand over her heart, hardly breathing. "Thank you," she whispered. As she hung up, she looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere in those busy streets was the man who had once been a stranger at a wedding, now quietly opening a door she had not even dared to knock on. She picked up her sketchbook, drew a tiny heart beside the words, "Because every girl deserves to feel beautiful once," and smiled. For the first time, her dream did not feel so far away. The day of the charity gala arrived with clear skies and a nervous rush of excitement. Ella stood behind the velvet curtain of the ballroom, adjusting the final details on the model she had styled. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above her, scattering light across the floor like 1,000 tiny stars. The room buzzed with conversation, business leaders, artists, and socialites mingling under the glow of gold and white. Ethan moved through the crowd with effortless calm, shaking hands, greeting sponsors, and giving quiet instructions to the event staff. From a distance, Ella watched him, realizing how naturally people followed his lead. There was something steady about him, something kind behind the authority. When Grace found Ella by the refreshment table, she said warmly, "You did wonderful work. Everyone keeps asking who handled the styling." Ella blushed. "Thank you. I am just happy to be here." Grace smiled knowingly. "Mr. Parker seems happy about that too." As the lights dimmed for the presentation, Ethan stepped onto the stage. His voice carried across the room. "Tonight is not about glamour," he said. "It is about people who believe in creating beauty with purpose." His gaze drifted for a moment, landing on Ella standing near the back. "It is about those who build hope from ordinary things." Her heart thudded. For a second, she forgot where she was. After the speech, Ethan found her near the exit, holding her toolkit. "You disappeared fast," he said. "I did not want to be in the way," she answered softly. "You were never in the way," he replied. "You were part of it." They stepped outside into the cool night air. The city shimmered around them, alive with sound. "Do you ever stop working?" she asked playfully. "Only when something or someone makes me want to," he said, his smile quiet and sincere. For the first time in a long while, Ella felt seen not as a struggling stylist, but as a woman with dreams worth believing in. She looked up at him, a little shy, a little brave. "Thank you for trusting me." Ethan met her eyes. "I think you were the one teaching me what trust looks like." The breeze carried their laughter down the steps of the ballroom. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night, the night of the gala, was the moment their hearts began to change. A week after the gala, Ella's life began to shift, quietly but completely. New clients started calling, some from the event, others who had simply seen her work online. Her name was listed on the Everlight Events website under Preferred Stylists, and her small booth suddenly became busier than ever. Every evening, after the last client left, she would clean her brushes and check her phone. There were always short, polite messages from Ethan, sometimes about work, sometimes just to ask how her day had gone. She replied carefully, trying to sound professional, but each message made her heart beat faster. One night, he texted, "I am at the park near Willow Creek. You once said you come here to sketch. Would you like some company?" She hesitated, then grabbed her sketchbook and went. The park was quiet, the fountain glimmering under the lamplight. Ethan sat on a bench, his jacket folded beside him. When she approached, he smiled. "You really came. I said I liked this place, not that I owned it," she teased gently. They sat side by side, the sound of crickets filling the silence. Ella opened her sketchbook, showing him her newest design, a series of soft bridal hairstyles inspired by the women she had met at the gala. "You see this?" she said. "They are all real brides. Each one had something unique. That is what I love about what I do." Ethan studied the drawings. "It shows. You create from the heart, not from ambition." She glanced at him. "And what about you? What do you create from?" He was quiet for a moment. "Control, maybe. Or fear of losing it." There was a sadness in his tone that she had not heard before. He looked out toward the water, the reflection of city lights flickering in his eyes. "I built everything I have by making sure nothing surprised me," he said softly. "But you are a surprise." The words hung between them, fragile and real. Ella looked down, her fingers brushing the edge of the sketchbook. "Then, maybe surprises are not always bad." He turned to her, the faintest smile crossing his face. "No, some are exactly what we need." They stayed there long after the fountain lights dimmed, two people from different worlds, finding quiet in the same night. It was not love declared. Not yet, but it was the beginning of something true. The next morning, the city seemed different, brighter, lighter, as if the world had begun to notice Ella the way Ethan did. She arrived at her small booth to find new messages from clients and a delivery waiting outside. It was a bouquet of white lilies with a small note tucked inside. "To the woman who makes beauty look effortless. Ella smiled, her fingers brushing the card, her chest fluttering with something she was almost afraid to name. But good days have a way of stirring the storm beneath them. That afternoon, while Ella was finishing a bridal trial, Grace called unexpectedly. Her voice was calm but clipped. "Ella, have you checked the news?" "No, I have been working. Why?" "Look online. There is an article about Mr. Parker." Ella's stomach tightened. She wiped her hands and opened her phone. The headline on the business page read, "Ethan Parker, CEO of Ward Events, seen with unknown woman at charity gala insider, claims she is his new fiancée." The photo showed them standing together outside the ballroom steps, laughing under the city lights. Her breath caught. CEO. The word blurred on the screen. She read it again and again, unable to move. When Grace spoke again, her tone softened. "I thought you knew." Ella forced a shaky smile. "I did not." "Ella, people will talk. Just stay calm, all right? Mr. Parker will handle it." But how could she stay calm when the world she thought she knew had just tilted? That evening, she waited for his message. Hours passed. Nothing. The quiet became unbearable. Finally, she walked out into the night, her hands trembling as she dialed his number. It rang twice before he answered. "Ethan," she said, trying to sound steady. "Is it true? Are you—" "Yes," he interrupted gently. "I am Ethan Parker, CEO of Ward Events." The words sliced through the air like glass. You let me believe you were someone else, she whispered. All this time. I never lied, he said quietly. I just did not correct what you assumed. That is the same thing. He exhaled. I wanted you to know me before you knew my name. I wanted to be someone real to you, not another man with money. Oh, her throat burned. You were real, until now. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, she said, I cannot do this, Ethan. Whatever this is, it was built on half-truths. Ella, please, let me explain. Not tonight. Her voice broke. Goodbye. She hung up before he could answer. The phone slipped from her hand and landed on the wet pavement. Around her, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. When she returned to her apartment, Lila found her sitting on the couch, still holding the card from the flowers. Ella, he is not who I thought he was, she whispered. He never was. That night, she opened her sketchbook. The page with his handwriting, because every girl deserves to feel beautiful, once now looked like a lie. She tore it out and pressed it to her chest, tears falling silently. Across the city, Ethan sat alone in his office, the skyline reflecting off the glass. His assistant had left hours ago, but he could not leave. On his desk lay her sketchbook, which she had forgotten during their last meeting. He opened it, saw the drawings, and felt the ache of what he had broken. For the first time in his life, the man who always controlled everything realized there were some things power could never fix. The following days blurred together in a quiet haze. Ella went to work, smiled at her clients, and pretended nothing inside her had changed. But every time she looked at her hands, she saw the card that had once carried Ethan's name, and her heart twisted with the echo of disappointment. The man she had begun to trust had turned out to be someone from a world she could never belong to. A week later, she came home from work to find a plain white envelope taped to her door. Inside was a formal letter from Ward Foundation. It read, Invitation to The Art of Real Beauty exhibit, featuring local stylists who inspire through authenticity. At the bottom, written in ink, was a small note. Please come. She almost threw it away, but curiosity tugged harder than pride. On the night of the event, she stood outside the grand hall downtown, heart pounding. The building gleamed with lights and camera flashes, banners fluttering in the warm evening breeze. She felt out of place among the guests in glittering gowns, yet something made her walk inside. The hall was filled with photographs of real women, shop owners, teachers, nurses, each styled with care, each portrait signed Ella Monroe. Her breath caught. They were her clients, her work, her art. Beneath one of the frames hung her old sketchbook, carefully mounted behind glass. The page she thought she had lost was displayed at the center. It read, Because every girl deserves to feel beautiful once. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you like the exhibition? A quiet voice asked behind her. She turned. Ethan stood there, dressed simply. No bodyguards, no spotlight, just him. I did not know how else to show you, he said softly. I used your sketches, your clients, your message. You were right, Ella. Real beauty is not sold, it is shared. You taught me that. She swallowed hard, anger mixing with ache. You had no right to use my work without asking. I know, he said. I wanted to surprise you, but maybe I was only trying to earn your forgiveness. She looked around the room again, the faces, the smiles, the way every woman seemed radiant, honest, alive. You did this for them? She asked quietly. For them, he said, and for you. Every piece here belongs to you, Ella. It is your vision. I just built the walls to hold it. Her chest tightened. The crowd murmured softly, the sound distant and blurred. Ethan stepped closer. I never meant to deceive you. I only wanted a chance to know you without the weight of my name. But if you cannot forgive me, I will understand. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she looked at her own work, the women who had found confidence through her hands, and she realized that truth did not erase kindness. It only demanded honesty. You should have trusted me with the truth, she said finally. You are right, he replied. May I start now? She nodded once, eyes bright. Then, start with honesty, not perfection. He smiled faintly. That I can do. The applause of the audience rose as the lights shifted toward the center stage. But in that quiet corner, Ella felt something inside her begin to heal, a small step toward forgiveness, and maybe toward love once more. A month passed after the exhibition. The world had moved on, but something new was quietly blooming in Ella's life. Her small booth had turned into a bright studio with her name painted across the glass. Ella Monroe Bridal Atelier. The sign was simple, but every letter felt like a victory she had earned through struggle, patience, and faith. The morning light spilled across the polished floor as she arranged flowers near the window. The studio smelled of fresh paint and jasmine shampoo. On one wall hung framed photographs from the Art of Real Beauty, the same portraits Ethan had displayed at the gala, now gifted back to her. She had forgiven him slowly, not in words but in small gestures. A returned phone call, a shared coffee, quiet laughter. That afternoon, she was finishing a bridal fitting when she heard the door chime. Ethan stepped inside, holding a bouquet of white lilies, the same kind he had sent her once before. "I heard the owner is taking appointments again," he said with a soft grin. "She might be," Ella replied, smiling. "Do you have an appointment?" "I was hoping she could fit me in," he said. "I brought a proposal." She raised an eyebrow. "A business proposal?" He shook his head. "A different kind." From his coat pocket, he pulled a small box and opened it. Inside was a delicate silver ring, simple and elegant. "Ella Monroe," he said quietly. "You turned my world from perfection into something real. I do not want a life that looks good on paper. I want the life that feels right with you." Her breath caught. The room fell silent except for the hum of the city outside. For a moment, she could only stare at him, remembering everything: the misunderstanding, the heartbreak, the forgiveness, and all the beauty that had come after. "Ethan," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes, "you could have any fairy tale ending you wanted." He smiled gently. "This is the only one I ever wanted." She laughed softly, the sound trembling with joy. "Then yes," she said, her voice breaking into a smile. "Yes, I will." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand steady, his eyes warm. The sunlight caught the silver band, scattering light across the room. Outside, a breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the scent of jasmine through the open door. Later that evening, they held a small celebration in the studio. Grace was there, along with friends and clients who had become family. Someone had brought a cake with the words, "Best mistake we ever made," written in frosting. As laughter filled the room, Ella looked around at the people she loved, then at Ethan standing beside her. In that moment, everything felt complete, the journey from confusion to truth, from pain to peace. Ethan took her hand and whispered, "You were late that day, remember?" She smiled. "Yes, but right on time for the rest of our lives." The lights glowed softly above them as the night settled over Willow Creek. The camera of memory pulled back one last time, the sign of her studio shining against the glass, the sound of laughter drifting into the street, and two people who had found love, not in perfection, but in the most beautiful mistake of all.